Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go. Here are your hosts, Angelos and Mo.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Angelos.
And I'm Mo. And today we're really excited to be sitting down again with Mark Stokes, this time to discuss success in commercial to residential conversions. Mark has come down to Plymouth all the way from Surrey to join us for the Your Success book launch party tonight, which we're really, really excited. We're going to talk more about a bit about his journey in a second, but he's an experienced entrepreneur, business investor who has a passion for creating and developing enduring businesses that enable the creation of shared value. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it, and a really special day for you, so that's not lost on me as well.
Well, before we start talking about your book, Mark, can you just give us a little bit of background about your history in business and property?
Yeah, sure. So I entered corporate life back in the early 90s with a degree in construction. I spent 26 years running large infrastructure businesses in 4 continents, 33 countries. But I guess probably in my 45th year, I decided that entrepreneurship was really something I wanted to be really passionate about. So the more successful I was in corporate life, the less time I was spending with my 4 children. So I left corporate life once and for all in May 2015, and I've set up a number of property businesses since.
Yeah.
So it was a transformational change in my life, but one that I don't regret at all.
What do you think it was, just very quickly, what was the tipping point for you to change from wanting to be in corporate life, get your pension, the usual story, to wanting to become more entrepreneur-like and follow your passion for that kind of thing?
Well, it's a good question, because I was on the board of 7 different companies within the UK PLC, but ultimately you're still on the payroll. I was very handsomely remunerated, but as I said before, I have 4 children, and the more boards and more successful I was in corporate life, just simply the less time I was spending with my children. And I've always had a passion for inspiring young entrepreneurs, and I wasn't able to fulfil that in corporate life. And I think corporate life, sometimes it can feel as though it's wrapping you in cling film, and your soul can't breathe. And I really felt passionate about that. I had a sit down with the board, and they asked me to stay on and do some restructuring. And after 9 months, then I left. And that weight of burden of responsibility which was lifted on the day I left was quite incredible, and that then enabled me to go through a period of transformation, really repurposing and truly understanding the skills that I had in corporate life. I was blessed with a huge amount of opportunity over those 26 years in so many different areas, whether that be restructuring, whether that be challenges, issues. I was a corporate troubleshooter for many of those years, 20 of those years, working home and abroad. And you learn a lot when you grow a business. You also learn a lot when you have to close a business down as well. And it gave me the opportunity for that vital pause for thought, rather than just literally waking up the next morning and ploughing on into the next venture. So I took a few weeks out, bought a lot of property along the way in the first 6 months, and then decided how I wanted to rechannel my energies. And I started to learn a bit more about myself, and different things came about.
Amazing. And just before we talk a little bit more about commercial to residential conversions and how people can sort of get into it, can you give us an example of the kind of things you do now in the commercial to residential space, just to put it in context?
Yeah, so typically we like the areas of towns and cities that are going through their gentrification, so that repurposing, regenerating aging assets. So we would typically take properties which would be somewhere between 10 and 40 apartments. Yeah. There would be commercial properties that would be underutilised or in a poor condition. We would secure them through exchange on conditionality. We'd get PD or planning, predominantly PD, permitted development rights for those who are not aware. And we would then secure those properties, legally complete, and then refurbish those properties, create the apartments, title split and sell them.
Amazing.
Well, can you describe your current project you've got going on at the moment?
Yeah, so we've currently got 7 developments which are live on site. They vary from got one at 7 apartments, another at 18 apartments in a Grade 2 listed property. We've just fully sold out on a 16 apartment development. Got another one of 26 apartments, which also has 2 commercial units as well. So we're not afraid of mixed use schemes. We see a lot of advantages there. Got another scheme at 10 apartments, again with 2 additional retail units. We've got another one in Surrey, which is 22 apartments. We're in advanced negotiations of 3 others, and we legally completed on an 8th development, which is something different. That was in our SAS pension. I'm not too familiar, I'm not sure how familiar your listeners are with SAS pensions, but we're really passionate about that. And when we left corporate life, part of that severing of the umbilical cord of corporate life was claiming our pensions, which to many people are their largest bank account. And I was probably, one of 99% of the population whose pension strategy was picking up their statement once a year, looking at it and thinking, well, that's not very positive. Hopefully it'll be better next year. And I did that for 26 years. So now as SAS pension trustees, we're in control of our property fund. And we've just completed on this 5 commercial unit, which had conditionality for 3 apartments as well. So that's brilliant news.
Awesome.
Amazing.
So you've been busy then?
Yeah, we've been quite busy. We do like to push ourselves because we're doing what we love.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you describe some common mistakes that people wanting to get started in developments make, and how they can be avoided? And sort of some people think, well, our development's just an easy step up from buy to let, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of views out there that anybody can achieve anything, but this is big boys games, big boys rules, commercial conversions, and land developments as well. It can be achieved by many people, and it is accessible, but I don't subscribe to the 7 steps to earning £1 million in a fortnight routine. I'm more in the nitty gritty of risk management.
Yeah.
In fact, with those 26 years of corporate life, I am a risk manager. When you've been involved in power stations and data centres where you have to have 100% uptime, most in a root cause analysis, in engineering terms, most failure is through human endeavour or human error. So look, we are absolutely focused on making sure that each one of our developments is meticulously planned. So some of the issues which people may not be aware of or commonly fall into, one right at the front end is making sure that you understand the risks that you're taking on board. And we almost always use conditionality in our offers. We have an abundance mindset. There is a lot of opportunity out there still. Some people believe that maybe there's a diminishing amount of permitted development opportunity, and I would agree, it is diminishing, but there's still a lot of opportunity out there and will be for some considerable time in the future. One area that we see a lot is how people calculate the private capital that is required on a development. Rather unhelpfully, which might seem strange, but rather unhelpfully, the main senior debt providers, the first charge debt providers on developments, what they tend to do is tell you how much equity you require. So they'll tell you your loan to cost, your loan to value, they'll tell you gross day one lending, and they'll tell you, therefore, this is how much equity you require. But the key fundamental of any business, and if you think most businesses, the ones that fail don't fail through lack of profit, they fail through lack of cash flow. And the funders, what they haven't done is done a cash flow model. We do a cash flow model. You have to at the early stages of a development before you've secured your funding. Because unless you cash flowed it, you don't know about things like VAT and your non-allowable costs. And what you'll end up doing is you'll end up asking for too little private capital and not understand the VAT requirements. And that's VAT for your private, for your professional team, for your VAT on commercial purchase. If a portion of it is mixed use development, for instance, you're still going to be paying VAT. And it is going to, and your builder's VAT as well, normally 5%. And it is going to take you a period of time, somewhere between 2 and 5 months, to get your VAT registration, get your VAT reclaim and rebate through from HMRC. So there's a couple of key areas that people miss out. You've spent many, many months working with private investors, building their confidence. You simply cannot afford to go out, ask them for one number, and then come back a few weeks later and ask them for a higher number. It's just going to undermine all the confidence that you built up. Yeah, definitely.
So just treating it totally differently to how you would do a normal sort of investment and taking it seriously.
Absolutely. For most developers, they'll be looking at using a combination of senior debt, possibly senior stretch or mezzanine, but mainly senior debt and private capital. In the world of commercial conversions and land developments, personally, I don't believe in the approach of no money down or none of your own money. If I were to ever be heard talking about none of my own money in front of one of my investors, then that'll be the last time they invest. When you're investing investors' funds, and we're talking about many millions of pounds, we've raised around about 10.5 to 11 million of funds in the last 17 months, and we're currently raising another 3.5 million for various developments. Okay. Our investors put a lot of faith, and I wear that accountability, to be honest. That's not to be done lightly. And I think sometimes across social media, it's taken too glibly. You have a serious accountability and responsibility to your investors. And that's a key part of our investor relations program at Equal Group.
Brilliant.
I think that's absolutely brilliant, the fact that you've explained it so easily, but it's an incredible responsibility you have in whether it's £10,000, 100 or a million or tens of millions of pounds. Ultimately, your investors are the ones who are putting their absolute faith in you and your project management and your risk assessment, in the whole figures, the whole project. It all rests on you.
It absolutely does. An investor will not even look at an investment memorandum until one thing happens, and that's you become investable in their eyes. And there's FCA 13.3 and all the sophisticated investor checks and screenings that we do, which are absolutely crucial. But from a fundamental whites of the eyes, one-to-one relationship, you in the first instance must become investable to your private investors. And you know what, in corporate life, 26 years, you quite often don't get a choice on who you work with. And one of the sincere privileges that I have, having left corporate life, is we have the opportunity to decide and select who we work with. And I happen to believe that like-minded people tend to aggregate and congregate together. And each and every one of our private investors, and with our key stakeholders as well across the businesses, I consider them personal friends. We've got great relationships. That's not to say every private investor is going to invite you to the family barbecue. It's not that kind of relationship. But we're engaging with people who we respect. And one tip I would give, understand with humility your business. Understand how you can grow, how you can learn and evolve from every source of information. Some of our greatest forms of counsel come from our private investors. Actually, they've got a lot to contribute. The reason why they've got some funds to invest is they've probably been successful in many different areas. And it would be remiss of us not to understand that they might want to contribute. So when we, for instance, propose an investment memorandum, I'll give an investor a call, socialise the idea, and then send them over an investment memorandum to a pre-screened FCA 13.3 investor. And quite often they'll come back and they might say, well, look, I'm not liquid at the moment, I haven't got the time or the funds for the next 4 to 5 months to invest. However, a couple of points that I'd add. And you just get a chance to walk a mile in their shoes, and it gives you a chance to articulate the investment memorandum in the language that they're prepared to receive. And that is incredibly valuable.
So moving on to your book, Mark, how did it come about?
Okay, so maybe I'll take you back to when I was probably in my early teens, 10, 11, 12. I've always loved books. We clearly didn't have too much social media back in those days. And I've always loved books, the feel of a book and reading a book. Used to read volumes and volumes of books as a youngster. And I guess from the age of 11, 12, 13, I always wanted to be an author. At that stage, and probably for the next 30 years, I had no idea what I wanted to be an author on. So I'd always held that ambition. But life gets in the way, and too busy at work and lots of things going on. And it was only actually when I left corporate life that I really decided, well, actually now's an opportunity. I love what we're doing. We're learning all the time, and wouldn't it be great to be able to share some of that learning with other people? So I started about 12 and a half, 13 months ago, writing the book. It's not been an easy journey. I've learned many things along the way. But a number of reasons why we wrote it.
Nice. Go on.
Do you want to talk to us about this new book? I've had a quick flick through this morning. Commercial to residential conversion.
And this is the only copy, is it, at the minute?
That is the only copy.
Yeah, that exists. Yeah.
It's in colour, which is brilliant, and it feels great. It feels like a really cool manual that you'll take around and refer to in the future. So can you tell us a little bit about the book itself, what it's going to help people looking to get into commercial to residential developments and that kind of thing, please?
Yeah. First and foremost, I always describe a commercial to residential conversion. It's a business. It's not a property, it's a business. And if you start with that business mindset, you'll make things a lot easier. With knowledge, you create the power of anticipation. If you can walk a mile in all stakeholders' shoes, whether that be the bank, private investors, and anticipate what their requirements are, understand at each step of the journey what each element will consist of, the RICS Red Book valuation, for instance, that is absolutely fundamental. So we spent a huge amount of time understanding exactly how the RICS would value a development, and then we build that into our modelling. So it's creating all that information and putting it in a very, very clear but detailed manual. So this isn't a book which will just give you, sowing those seeds of 5, 6, 7 key points to understand in a development. This is the nitty-gritty of everything you'll need to plan out your development, to anticipate the challenges, the opportunity ahead, understand the points of bank grade due diligence rather than just veneer due diligence and risk taking. This is right at the heart of risk management. So I boiled that down into 12 core principles, but the book then goes into a lot of detail into business, although it's not a tax book, it'll touch on all the elements of tax, how you interact with people, and we'll take you through each step from finding the development right the way through to exiting out the back end of the development. So I've tried to put a life of learning into this, not just in commercial conversions, but also in business.
And what kind of level is it pitched at for people? Is it for how experienced do people need to be to read it?
You could pick that book up off the bookshelf with no knowledge and start, and you get a huge amount from that. Yeah. Equally, for those that have already done 1 or 2 developments and really want to take their scaling of the business to the next level, it will be equally applicable there. So it really does touch across the broad spectrum, but don't expect a light touch. This is a detailed, nitty-gritty, probably one of the more detailed books that addresses this great strategy in the marketplace.
And when is the book being released, please, Mark?
So mid-October, so it'll be going live on Amazon shortly. So it's already up there, and so mid-October, get your order in, and you should have the book with you 3rd week in October.
Brilliant, amazing. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us again on the podcast. It's been really, really good to see you. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can contact me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I've got a new website as well, which is www.markstokesuk.com. So I'll put a few blogs and interesting articles there on whether it be my running, my books, various things. Social media.
And it's quite a good website. I've checked it out, Mark, already. It's quite professional looking compared to quite a few others out there. So, yeah. Cool.
So we want to know your thoughts and if you've had any experiences or if you've got any questions for Mark on commercial to residential conversions, pop the comments in the video or drop us an email on hello@yoursuccesspodcast.com. Get in touch on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
So thank you very much again, Mark, for joining us today. And thanks to you at home for listening to Your Success Podcast. Please click subscribe, leave us a review, and we look forward to your comments on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. And don't forget to check out our book, Your Success, on Amazon. So if you head to tiny.cc/your book, you can find it there. So I've been Angelos.
And I've been Mo.
And see you again on the next exciting episode of Your Success Podcast.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.